Imagine stepping into the private chambers of Queen Elizabeth I, not the war room of strategy, nor the throne room of glory, but the heart of her womanhood, her bedchamber. The Virgin Queen, cloaked in lace, crowned in pearls, and immortalized in portraits that shimmered with virginal radiance, maintained a presence so flawless it left courtiers breathless. But behind the alabaster face and ruby lips lay a reality that would make even the most hardened peasant flinch. The reeking rose, the disgusting hygiene habits of Queen Elizabeth I, the Virgin Queen's perfumed illusion. Step into the corridors of Elizabethan England, and you will find yourself immersed in a world of velvet gowns, powdered faces, whispered court intrigue, and a stench that lingers like the breath of a rotting rose. At the center of this opulent, unwashed world reigned Queen Elizabeth I, the so-called Virgin Queen, whose name inspired awe and reverence across Europe. A woman of razor intellect, theatrical charm, and unbreakable will, Elizabeth's grip on power was legendary. But peel back the layers of perfumed silk and rouge, and one uncovers a monarch whose hygiene habits would make even the most hardened Tudor stable boy gag. Despite commanding an empire that boasted poets like Shakespeare and explorers like Drake, Elizabeth lived, and ruled, in an age that feared water as much as it revered holiness. Cleanliness, contrary to modern instinct, was not a virtue. It was a risk. The Queen, ever conscious of appearance, was wrapped in elegance on the surface, but beneath the royal lace was a body rarely touched by soap, water, or anything resembling what we might call a bath. 2. Bathing once a month, whether she needed it or not. Elizabeth's court was obsessed with display. Gowns of white satin, pearls sewn into sleeves, hair like spun gold. But these layers served another purpose, to mask what lurked beneath. It was widely accepted in her court that Her Majesty bathed only once a month, whether she needed it or not, as courtiers jested with a twitch of disgust behind their powdered fans. These monthly ablutions did not involve water so much as they involved wiping and sponging. Water, in Elizabeth's eyes, was something dangerous, capable of opening the pores and letting in illness. And in a court that remembered the Black Death like a family heirloom, this fear of bathing was inherited by generations. Instead of water, Elizabeth turned to linen cloths soaked in scented vinegar, rubbed gently on the skin, more as a ritual than a cleanse. Yet the Queen was no stranger to the smell of herself. She cloaked her natural musk under heavy perfumes, rosewater, civet, musk from glands of animals long dead, until her presence preceded her like a choking fog in a perfumed storm. 3. A mouth of blackened pearls. If Elizabeth's skin was anointed in layers of oils and perfume, her mouth told a darker story. Sugar, a luxury in her age, was an addiction she never tamed. Obsessed with candied violets and spiced ginger lozenges, Elizabeth's teeth were said to be black as ink, a badge of her wealth and status, but also of decay and rot. By the end of her life, many of her teeth had fallen out, and those that remained sat crooked and brittle in inflamed gums. Foreign ambassadors noted the state of her smile with barely hidden revulsion. One described her breath as foul beyond endurance. Dentists were a luxury few could trust in the 16th century, and Elizabeth, who feared pain more than shame, never let a barber surgeon near her molars. She often stuffed her cheeks with scented cloth or clove-soaked cotton to mask the smell of rot. During court appearances, she rarely opened her mouth fully, speaking through gritted teeth or behind a fan. Her words carried authority, but her breath carried death. 4. Lice in a crowned head. Even monarchs were not spared the infestations that plagued Tudor England. Elizabeth's wigs, curled, powdered, and adorned with jewels, were more than fashion statements. They were armor against lice. Her real hair, thinning and likely riddled with pests, was rarely shown. Instead, her attendants meticulously styled artificial coiffures, each one teeming with powdered mercury and arsenic meant to kill lice, but which also slowly poisoned her scalp. Underneath the crown jewels and lace, the Queen's real scalp was a battlefield. Scabbed, flaky, and often oozing from irritation. It was rumored that when her wig was removed, the smell that escaped was so vile that servants had to brace themselves. But vanity, in Elizabeth's world, was not optional. To appear weak was to risk losing the crown. So she wore her rotting wigs with pride, letting no one near enough to glimpse the horror underneath. The Virgin Queen had secrets, and some of them crawled. The royal wardrobe, layers of dirt. Queen Elizabeth's gowns were legendary, hundreds of them, each more ornate than the last. Embroidered with gold thread, lined with fur, and weighed down with gemstones, these dresses were triumphs of craftsmanship. But they were rarely, if ever, cleaned. Washing fabric was a dangerous business. It faded dyes, loosened threads, and damaged delicate lace. Instead, dresses were aired, brushed, and sprayed with perfumes. The result? Gowns that stank like old meat cloaked in rosewater. Elizabeth sometimes wore the same dress for weeks. The inner linings absorbed sweat, bodily oils, and the occasional bloody stain from menstruation or sores. Her undergarments, made of linen, fared little better, changed infrequently. They were more like second skins of filth than clothing. And since Elizabeth suffered from chronic skin conditions, some believed exacerbated by her makeup and clothing, her dresses became breeding grounds for infection. Still, to speak of such things was treasonous. The Queen was divine. The Queen was flawless. The Queen smelled like a funeral wrapped in lavender. 6. The Rouge of Rot, makeup that killed. Elizabeth's iconic face, pale as bone, lips painted crimson, eyes ringed with kohl, was a mask of majesty. But it was also a mask of suffering. To achieve her ghostly complexion, Elizabeth used Venetian ceruse, a white lead-based paste that ate into the skin. With every application, it poisoned her. Cracks formed on her face, which she filled with more lead. Sores erupted, which she concealed with thicker layers. Over time, her once beautiful face became a tapestry of corrosion, hidden beneath increasingly grotesque paint. By the 1590s, her face paint would flake and fall off during speeches. Courtiers often found bits of ceruse on their sleeves after kissing her hand. Underneath it all, her skin was said to resemble melted wax mottled with lesions, yet Elizabeth never appeared in public without her mask of youth. To be seen barefaced was unthinkable. A royal face was not flesh, but symbol. Even in her final days, when she could barely move, she insisted on being painted and dressed. 7. Chamber pots and cloaked corners. The Palace of Whitehall and the court of Elizabeth may have been full of art, music, and poetry, but the corridors stank of human waste. There were few dedicated toilets in the royal residences. Instead, chamber pots were the norm. Hidden behind tapestries or under thrones, these ceramic or metal bowls served everyone, from nobles to the Queen herself. Attendants often emptied them into the moat or out of palace windows. On warm days, the smell became unbearable. Human waste soaked into the wooden floors, stained stone walls, and attracted rats the size of cats. Elizabeth herself used a commode chair, a throne in every sense, except it held her waist. It was cleaned regularly, but not always thoroughly. Visitors to her bedchamber often remarked on the lingering scent, masked poorly with incense and herbs, yet no one dared complain. To mention the Queen's odors was to invite disgrace. So they smiled, bowed, and breathed through their sleeves. 8. Disease, decay, and death behind curtains. Though Elizabeth ruled with power and majesty, her body was betraying her. By her 60s, the years of lead poisoning, sugar, and filth had taken their toll. Her breath reeked, her teeth were gone, her legs were riddled with sores that leaked pus, and her skin was a parchment of scars. She suffered from insomnia, headaches, and chronic depression. Some claimed she spoke to shadows, saw ghosts, and wept without reason. Her body was crumbling, but she refused to let go of the image she had cultivated, of the eternal, untouchable Queen. When she finally fell ill in 1603, she refused to be moved, bathed, or treated. She lay for days on a pile of dirty cushions, surrounded by her courtiers in silent horror. Her breath wheezed like a bellows, her skin turned gray, and her eyes stared at nothing. She died unwashed, rotting from within and without, the final act in a life wrapped in silks and soaked in decay. 9. Legacy in stench and symbol. Elizabeth's legacy is undeniable, a woman who defied patriarchal powers, defeated the Spanish Armada, and presided over a cultural renaissance. But her body was a prison, and her habits a symptom of an age that confused grandeur with purity. Today, history paints her as noble, powerful, and visionary. And she was. But she was also human, painfully, grotesquely so. Her body stank. Her teeth rotted. Her wigs crawled. Her clothes festered. In truth, she was the perfect reflection of her era, beautiful from a distance, horrifying up close. Conclusion, a queen cloaked in perfume and pus. So what are we to make of the Virgin Queen and her reeking court? Elizabeth ruled with brilliance, but she lived in filth. She inspired nations, but she feared soap. Her perfume was not a luxury but a necessity, her makeup not vanity but camouflage. To truly understand Elizabeth I, one must look beyond the paintings and poems, and smell the truth. Hers was a reign not just of golden speeches and silver gowns, but of lead, lice, and the long, slow rot of a world that did not yet know what clean meant. She may have ruled like a goddess, but she died like every other mortal, surrounded by her own stench, clinging to illusions painted in powder and fear.